Whoa. Hey, it's Trekland HQ. It's a Tuesday and we are live. 20 years ago, when Star Trek died. Again. Yeah. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and, yes, TreklandTreks.com. Got to see me as the summer goes on for your own customized away mission to actual Star Trek filming sites. Your customized, I should say. Hey, yes, everything Star Trek. Here again on a Tuesday for some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. This week, we're going to take a little bit of a context dive. Context is not for kings. It's for everybody. I keep saying that's what Trekland is all about, actually. And we're going to dive into that. First of all, thank you for joining me on another Tuesday here in summer, in con season revving up, and in hopefully the end, at least for a while, of the Star Trek drought that we're having. Finally here, Strange New Worlds Season 3 is on the horizon here in about, 9 days? 8 days? Week from Thursday with 2 episodes. Everybody's ramping up for that. But I happened to think of something. I looked at the calendar. What a concept. And as usual, we're Star Trek and we love us some anniversaries. And I thought of one that ought to be recognized along with all the happy dappy ones. So put that in your thinking cap and smoke it while I say welcome, welcome to everybody coming in on the chat. It's good to see all of our regulars, of course. Everybody, introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming from, how the Trek is in your neck of the woods, how the weather is in your neck of the woods. Oh, boy. And not just that the weather is happening and we're doing it, but now apparently we're not going to do anything about it because we won't know about it, at least here in the States. Come on, Europe, Asia, Africa, you hold up your end of the bargain. Would you please, for civilization's sake? Thank you, neighbors to North Canada. No, I'm being a little sarcastic there, but I'm going to say, before we go too far that direction, if you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, welcome, welcome. I'd love to know how you found us. Welcome, welcome, as you will find when you jump into the chat. Everybody is neighborly here. I go at this time of day so we can have folks from around the globe be with us. A little later than usual getting started today, but had a couple of tech issues here. But not for any lack of talk. Just remember, though, if you're coming at us on YouTube, that's the best. You'll see all the comments along with the Twitch folks. And you can jump us for our super chats. You can monetize, help me monetize this. Cross a little silver over my palm. I'll jump to your questions. I'll look for those first. And hey, if you're with us on Facebook, that's cool. Just know that you're only seeing the Facebook comments in the chat. And as usual, I'm going to do my soapbox here, and then we'll take a micro break, and I will get into the chat. So don't take my paying no attention here for a sign that I won't. We will back scroll, in fact, and use the TTLer's help to mark that. So welcome again, everybody. It's a Trekland Tuesdays Live. Yes, San Diego Comic-Con is next week. I will be here Tuesday normal. And then 2 weeks after that is Trek Vegas. I will be here Tuesday normal in between. And that's all coming up. And Strange New Worlds is coming up. And I'm going to jump ahead. If you have not seen it, we had our season 13 season finale for the Trek Files with none other than good old Two Takes Frakes. Jonathan Frakes is our special guest because in the middle of people talking about, oh, well, what anniversaries do we have? Because, again, we love us anniversaries in Star Trek. It's a 5-year. Boy, 6 years is the jackpot, but 5s, even numbers are the jackpot. 5s are a little hard to come by, but this is the 60th anniversary, a year earlier than the main 60th. This is the 60th anniversary of the shooting of Where No Man's Gone Before, which is the pilot that actually sold the original series when The Cage didn't, and got us everything that came afterwards. So little bit of a special anniversary there. You can go on about some of the oddball ones. On the Trek Files, we celebrate one that's not getting a lot of attention, but this will put the money on you. This will put the math on you. 35 years ago this summer was Best of Both Worlds summer. It's hard to imagine this for all you folk just now watching Trek or just now watching TV. But the impact of the Best of Both Worlds cliffhanger, those 3 agonizingly excruciating months, it's infamous now. Mr. Worf, fire. Dum, 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 dum. It's hard to convey that to people now. Now, I know it's been 2 years, apparently, on the Strange New World, or nearly 2 years for the Strange New World cliffhanger comeback, and we've all somehow survived. But we also had 2 or 3 other series in the meantime, right? Wasn't a single focus series and all that. And the world has so many damn distractions now that will survive. But back in the day, people were in agony. And you'll hear the podcast, we talk about that. But what that did, though, was focus a lot of attention on Star Trek Next Generation. And basically season 4 was really when the show blew up. The series blew up, numbers-wise. Right? It became a cultural icon. And even more season 5. And even more season 6 and 7. That's an anniversary that we celebrated with Jonathan. We even celebrated the anniversary finale of the finale before the Best of Both Worlds. Anybody remember what the finale was before? What a difference a year made between Best of Both Worlds and just a year earlier. Shades of gray. Yeah. Anyway, you got to listen to it. Jonathan was awesome. I said in a tweet today, everything Jonathan touches turns to gold. It was just awesome. So I appreciate that. But it got me thinking, the obvious, and I talk about this too, we don't have to look at just premieres and finales or movie premieres. It doesn't have to just be those, because there's a big chunk of stuff in the middle. And one of the chunks not in the middle and tied to a finale, but an anniversary that we don't think about happened 20 years ago. And it was actually a perfect storm of anniversaries. One of them we've already talked about. People are talking about it because if you're into finales, this is the 20th anniversary of the finale. And I know you may want to hold your nose, of Enterprise. And if not the actual finale, the stinker that everybody likes to think of it as now, if not that, just think of it as the end of the series. Think of Demons and Terra Prime, the 2-parter, as the real finale of Enterprise if you want to. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's high time you go do a watch of Enterprise. By the way, the 4th of July weekend was very quiet here. We felt more like contemplating than celebrating. I hope all my American friends got through the weekend okay, too. For us here, not my idea. Better half, the former script coordinator who's been burned by the Star Trek she loved and then retried it in bits and blurbs, decided that she was going to just sit down and do a rewatch of Lower Decks. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and last night, we did a bingey. I only missed a few episodes. A couple of them I really missing. But it was amazing to get refreshed with Lower Decks. First of all, to watch the season 1 growing pains and settling, and then watch all of the wonderful stuff evolve. And watching skeptical better half, by second season, look at me and say, the first season wasn't as good. Meaning, the second season was better. And then laughing out loud at times. Oh, the cynic enjoyed it. Yeah. Whatever you've been doing to celebrate, that's been good. Whatever you've been doing to mark your time, that's cool. But it occurred to me in recent days, there's another anniversary beyond the finale of Enterprise from 20 years ago. And that is the summer, even more so than Best of Both Worlds, when a lot of people didn't know what the hell was coming next. This is the 20th anniversary of the Star Trek Meltdown franchise anniversary, because it wasn't just the end of Enterprise, as you know, so famously was the intent if it missed the mark. Rick and Brannon wanted the end of Enterprise to be a marker for the end of the 18 years of the Berman era. I didn't start that way, but that's kind of, if you want to call it another term, be my guest. But it was the end of production that had gone constantly for TV with 1 or 2 series at a time since 1987. It was a real marker. But it wasn't just about making up bumper stickers. 2005 was the year Star Trek blew up, gang. And for those of you who were not there, everything was falling apart. For the first time in 18 years, there was no active production happening. There was none on the horizon. The pundits all said, if they cared, that Star Trek was old and dead and tired. That Star Trek was tired. Now, producers, Rick Berman, said that it was due to audience fatigue. And they said, hey, we wanted to wait a couple of years before we started a new show. The studio made us do it. The network made us do it. Keep going without a rest, without a break. I want to say it was more, and that could have been, but by the end of it, it was more about producer fatigue. And young minds, fresh thoughts, hadn't been promoted, hadn't been accessed until it was too late. Different thoughts. And I'm looking at you like great Manny Cotto. And others. And TV was changing. There were so many trends going on. But the bottom line was there was no fresh track. Well, what did that mean? I remember specifically Billy Peets, the chief lighting technician for most of the Berman era, walking down the day we heard that Enterprise had actually been canceled was during filming of part 2 of Enter Mirror Darkly. And the word came down that all the huge trilogy shows, all the amortizing, all the budget cuts and smart budget fixes from the studio and in place of the network, digitizing, going digital in so many ways, including camera work. So much of that there was a ratings bump, but it was not good. Plus, the world was demoralized about the success, Trek world was, about the success of Battlestar, of Ron's Battlestar. People were happy for him and the show, but it was getting, I was the darling child in sci-fi world. The actual fact was, even on its crippled little network UPN, Enterprise, as a big fish in a small pond, was still getting 1 million more viewers a week than Galactica, which was a little fish in a big pond. Wait, you know what I'm saying? Even though it got all the critical darling reviews, Enterprise was still seen by more people every week, but you'd never know that by the vibe. Enterprise was slinking to the finish line crippled. Galactica was busting out of the gate, this new hit. And that was the vibe, because, the movie franchise had tanked 3 years earlier with Nemesis. And basically, Paramount did not renew Rick Berman's contract. Now, there was another year to go. It dragged out. A little bit. But for another year or so, when they announced the JJ movie contract and people, jumped up and down, it was an odd time. But what happened in Star Trek proper was not just, a shift that everyone in fandom was dealing with. There was a shift everywhere. It was a perfect storm of events. Current Star Trek had been around for ages, not even a series, but a movie. Nothing was on the horizon. Rick had commissioned the Romulan War movie from Eric Jendresen, but that was as dead as his contract. No one was going to do a movie from a producer who had not been renewed. And it sounds like the cake was already baked for JJ. They just had to wait for the contract to end before they announced the new one that had which was not a Star Trek contract. It was a movie deal of which he wanted to make 1 or 2 Star Trek movies, to the shock of the world that had just been saying for a year, that Star Trek was dead and needed to rest for 20 years. Yeah, maybe some producer fatigue, because the audience fatigue was starting to get excited about downloadable fan films from YouTube and taking not 2 hours for one 15-minute act, but now getting to the point where you could download a whole show under the keep it gray, kids, keep it gray, and we will turn the other way as long as you don't make money on it. Basic rules done by, because the Paramount attorneys and powers that be, before they all left, weren't dumb. They knew the franchise was shrinking in popularity, and fan films kept it alive out there. What were the other pillars keeping? There was no production, but what about DVDs and all that in home entertainment? What about merchant licensing? Yeah. What about good old StarTrek.com? Still happening. What else was going on, though? Well, Berman's contract was ended, running out within the year. Crickets and cobwebs at his office until then because no one was answering his phones. Sorry. Karma came home to roost, huh? No production because Star Trek was widely perceived by the suits and the bean counters and the public, if they were paying attention, as old and tired, and it would need at least 20 years to rest. Wrong. What else happened? Oh, yeah, the Viacom divorce. And Star Trek was caught in the middle. However, at the time, I remember walking down Star Trek Street between stages when we got the news the day of the cancellation. And I mentioned Billy Peets. Everybody on the crew, a lot of them had jobs there for 10, 15. Some of them, a handful, about 30 people, had worked the entire 18 years in all the different various areas. There's a photo that Rick had commissioned. If you had been working since first season, Next Generation, all the way to the end, you were in this photo. Billy kind of shook himself out of his own fugue because a lot of folks, if you hadn't worked anywhere else, people are going to say, why did you not work anywhere else for 18 years? Because it was a great family to work for, as far as the stage and the offices and all the creatives on staff. And I remember he looked at me and said, this was in March of 2005. Oh, what about you? What about you and Communicator magazine, the licensed fan club's magazine? And I said, oh, we're fine. There's lots of Star Trek we haven't even talked about yet. We'll keep going. Wrong, because the third leg of this perfect storm was the implosion of parent company Decipher. I thought they'd be bankrupt. There was embezzling involved. It wasn't just the ending of acting. We could have kept printing a magazine. Fandom was not going anywhere. Now, the business model was shifting. We'd already seen the impact of being online. Within a couple of years, good old Dan Madsen, my buddy and boss, and I had come up with a plan to shift. Good thing it didn't happen because we would have been building a lot of things that social media would give us later. But in the clunky online world of Internet 1.0, we were going to come back with that. But at the time, we thought, oh, we're not going anywhere. That soon ended when by summertime, Decipher imploded. And this that I'm holding in my hand, this was the last copy, the last edition, number 155, that started with Dan's little newsletter before the Con of Wrath, before the Wrath of Khan. The license he improbably had been granted and then built, and merchandise, etc. And with Lucasfilm and ABC, eventually, Lucasfilm having a license to do the same thing with Star Trek, the Star Wars, the official fan club and its magazine and a merch line, pioneering all this stuff. These paradigms didn't exist, but things were shifting by the mid-aughts in many ways. And Decipher had bought Dan out 5 years before, the game company, and then succumbed to the game industry collapsing, but also hollowed out from inside, I thought, by embezzling close in. And I thought they would just crash and burn, but they didn't. They hung on with about 4 employees out of one time, maybe 150, in different divisions, including the fan club division. and us, Communicator. We were told around May or so that 155 would be our last issue, and we would have to do refunds and all that kind of thing for subscriptions. The irony is this, and see how far we had come. Look at that! Oh my God, overt or overrated? Yeah, with 7 on the front. We'd actually become side stitching. We had become, for the last 3 or 4 years, an actual magazine sold on newsstands, not just to fan club members through the mail. I was very proud of how we kept evolving Communicator over my 8 years as editor. But the plug was pulled. Sadly, after 155, we had 156 laid out. Our art director, Michelle Verana in Montreal, had the pages ready. We were waiting on 1 or 2 full-page ads, and we were ready to go to press with the lost issue of Communicator number 156, which was our annual behind-the-scenes issue. Who made an annual behind-the-scenes issue a big thing for Communicator? You're looking at him. And then after that was our Enterprise finale issue, so we had time to collect all that. It never got to the layout stage, but we had every single interview done. We even had Jolene nailed down for the first time in the run of the show for the finale. Sorry, sad. Those are still in my hard drive. I would love to pull those out and do something with them at some point. But that was my summer of 2005. My Communicator world was going poof. Couple that to the coming divorce of Viacom, with CBS going to one side and Paramount to the other, the pictures, and all the little aspects of Viacom, the cable, Simon & Schuster, everything splitting down, all the different divisions, splitting down the middle and figuring out all the things like Star Trek. What would that look like? I mean, one thing that happened here with no active Star Trek to cover was that my other little arena, the British licensed Star Trek magazine, Star Trek then Monthly. This is a issue, old numbering system. This is issue number 122 from August, September 2005. Now, some of you who kept up with the Modern magazine, yes, this is the magazine printed in UK as the official UK licensed magazine. When the Communicator imploded within a year, by Labor Day-ish of 2006, our pitch to bring back a modern version of the fan club and Communicator magazine that leaned into the digital world as it existed in 2006 was approved and turned down by licensing, because no one who was involved at licensing, the people calling the shots, not longtime survivor John Van Sitters and Paula Block at the time, but their new bosses who were in a vacuum because there were no bosses, because the perfect storm of all this, the 3 legs, Viacom was imploding and licensing was being restructured, and there were no people involved to make these decisions, so we were frozen. Sound like something that's happening right now? Yeah. John was all set to let us experienced folks run with it and evolve for the new time, but he was not allowed because he was overruled by the bigger bosses. There weren't even any licensing attorneys. They gave everything to the marketing attorneys, and they're the ones that said, hold up until people are in place. By the time people were in place, everybody was bedazzled by the middle of 2006 and the announcement that JJ was going to do a movie. Oh my God, who thought Star Trek could still be alive so soon? Well, people that don't know the franchise. But everybody was all blinded by the godly goodness, the wonder, the majesty, the glitz and glamour that would be the JJ movie. And everything old would pale in comparison. Well, we found out that wasn't going to happen. But at that point, to have a magazine, Titan, the UK folks, who had a long track record, who had 10 years, 12 years, they were allowed to bring the British magazine over to the US. And whether you knew it or not, there was actually different numbering, because the US pages had to be taken out of pounds and dollars, and that there was specific UK advertising, stores in the UK that were not, they had to be swapped out for house ads, promotional ads, if not an actual paid ad. So they ran dual for a long time, dual numbering. The spellings were both ways. That was a nightmare. No of those extra U's in the American edition. And yes, I was lucky enough to come up and be offered the chance to do a column in the UK called In Game. And this was the first one, the end of the year. But this year of uproot and uproar, thank goodness Titan was around, because as I looked around, by the late part of the year, and there's so much more story to tell about this. If I ever do my damn book, I've talked about this at times over the years in podcasts. There was so much original intention that gave root to human nature and uprooting. Within a year, the only things standing of Star Trek were our licensing friends, 2 of them, StarTrek.com, which was 3 full-time and 2 part-time people, and that would be gone when I got to join as a part-timer. By the end of 2007, that would be gone. But at the time, production was shut down. Rick Berman's office, Rick Berman and his assistant, Andori and Doug Pellegrini, they had a year, and then they closed up their shop, right? To start Rick's long retirement to Malibu. But very quickly, there was nobody left standing. There was still a fan base out there that was hurt, that was bewildered, and trying to find its own way. And yeah, fan films were doing that. Within a year or two, people would find out this thing called Facebook and then Twitter. And fandom would find survival that way, kind of the way Zoom was a survival line during the pandemic. But and the JJ movie, which people were all hanging on, and which I kept saying, gang, it will only be a 2-hour movie, good or bad. It'll only be a 2-hour movie. It will not be small screen adventures again coming at you 26 times a year, or even 10 that we didn't know then. Yeah. I was talking in this first in-game column about how everything was not gone, how the things that were still standing at the end of 2005. I said Paramount's hardly a ghost town, though the Mission Impossible 3 film was going. Anyway, I went through some of the things I've already ticked off here. A lot of things were sad. The stages were dead. All the production space was dead. But there were 2 or 3 offices that were still handling Star Trek. I said, so yes, the dust is settling, but still, the future is as murky as ever. Eventually, we'll have a clear look at who will run Star Trek next, and when, and on what media, and under what rules. The film is in development, is just that, in development, right? With fans already creating pro-quality Star Trek films, and the internet and podcasting taking off, who knows? Who knows what forms the next Star Trek will take? And the politics, the society, the technology, and the culture that it will reflect. The core has to be Roddenberry-esque, but with a different viewpoint and the distance to soak up all that's changed from 1987, much less 1964 or 1979. So, yeah. And I was trying to be upbeat because people were depressed. It was the end of Star Trek. What it was personally for me was, what the hell am I going to do now? My career up until then had been explaining what was going on, chronicling, archiving, interviewing people. That had been a mini industry for me for 15 years, whether it was the companion book or it was StarTrek.com or it was working for the other magazines, whether it was helping build one of many, helping build Star Trek The Experience, which at the time was still standing. It would be for another 2 or 3 years. We didn't know it then. But there was no Trek to talk about. What was I supposed to do for a living, aside from the world itself changing? So I thank you, John Freeman, and the powers that be, for getting me into the commentary gig. I've often thought that it was a 2010 era convention where I left my slide tray at home and I had to invent something new to talk about for my hour without having pictures to point to and talk about, history to talk about. That column made me do a mind shift. That column was the first time, aside from my little editor's log at the beginning of Communicator, which is more about if something major happened, if someone died, if something premiered, I'd make a comment on it. But mainly it was to introduce the contents of the magazine and the writers, make it very fan-friendly, human-friendly. That in-game column, which started off being called In Close Orbit, because he wanted to emphasize the insider aspect, but it was too clunky. We called it Endgame because it was always the last page of the magazine. Ooh, one of those kind of things, right? Yeah. Thank you, Titan Magazine, British Star Trek Magazine, for getting me into the commentary and pundit business. So yeah, that was 3 years before the 2010-ish thing. Who knew? Who knew that not only would be doing commentary, it wouldn't be on Dead Tree Media. It would be like this eventually, like so many others. But I'm saying all this. I'm saying all this because right now we've been talking for weeks about where we are. Star Trek's not dead. No one is talking about going away for 10 or 12 years again. But it is looking increasingly suspicious that the reason there's been no forward that Strange New has been given an endgame, and Starfleet Academy, my God, hasn't even hit the airwaves yet and got 2 seasons in before that happened. A second season in. People were going, why are you getting a second season? We hadn't even seen it. Maybe there's ulterior motives going on. Maybe that guy who has a contract up at the end of year, maybe just the force and the human nature, the human ego of new owners do not renew Alex Kurtzman's contract. And a lot of you may celebrate that, but yay or nay, it's still a point of chaos. It's still a chaos point. It's still an uncertainty point. And whether there's somebody new coming, and when you uproot something, you may not agree with it, but once it's uprooted, many times in life, it's not like something follows along automatically, even if it's bad, even if it's better or bad or middling or whatever. Sometimes you get nothing. All the people wanting Discovery to be boycotted and hated in 2017 for something better to come along, that's not the way the world works. Not the way the world works in media. If you had blown up Discovery in 2017, 2018, there was no guarantee that you'd just get another choice. It's no A, B, C, or D, all the above. That's why it was ludicrous. You work in the system and improve it. You give feedback, and that's what happened. That's what started to happen. You don't blow it up because it might be another 10 or 15 years before you got a second chance, another bite at that apple. That could happen now. That could be where we are a year from now or a year and a half from now, assuming this sale finally goes through and Ellison and Skydance finally take over. Here's what I wrote on my 5th column of Endgame, which now was in the 6th season. This was about a month before the JJ announcement was made. People were talking about, I was trying to say, if Star Trek is such a clunker, if Star Trek is so old and tired and no one cares, then why are all these news events happening, right? George had just come out as gay officially at that time. Walter had been in the New Voyagers fan series, which was, James Cawley's series. Jimmy's ashes were going to be sent into space. Shatner's kidney stone. Do you remember this? Shatner's kidney stone sold for $25,000 in a charity auction. It was won by an online casino. This is 2005. for a touring show of oddities. You know, because Star Trek still had value. It still had spark. It wasn't anything organized. You know, between Nemesis going down and Enterprise going down, people were all predicting nobody cared. Nobody cared. But the rumor mill was already starting. Patrick, Shatner, and even Scott Bakula talking about maybe Star Trek, maybe things. Bryan Singer saying he might do it. This was before the JJ announcement. He'd like to do one. Eric Jendresen even trying to resurrect his movie idea with a different producer. These are all trial balloons. They're judging the reaction, but it's by people that thought there would be a reaction. Because there was. We were starting to come out of the fog of war, the fog of depression, that, yeah, Star Trek had a lot of life in it. At the very end, I said, if Star Trek is so devalued, why is there a big custody battle during the recent CBS Viacom corporate split divorce? Thank you very much. I said it in 2005. The franchise wound up with CBS's TV side, but the way is still open to do films under Paramount Pictures on the Viacom side. With less risk and time involved, our prediction is for a flick rather than a new TV series. So stay tuned, folks. Hollywood has a notoriously short memory, and profits are measured quarter by quarter now. The push for Star Trek's return will come sooner than later. Not what the big boys were saying. Our only concern as fans is who will be in charge and how much clout will they have for the project, for good or for bad, based on how much background and fan concern they bring to it. Can I just say that within a month, all of that was exactly vindicated, and all the spectrums I was predicting, it could be this, but it could run this gamut to here. You could have somebody that knows Trek, they just don't have it in their heart. They know what it is. Or you could have somebody that doesn't know, but they're smart enough to have people on board in their high team that do know. That's kind of what happened. It was a mix of all of this. But it wasn't a wimpy person that the studio mass managed. Everybody wrote JJ a blank check, not only of money, but of time and energy and intention, and let him do the first one. By the time I wrote my next Endgame column in the magazine, in Titans UK magazine, it may have been USified by then, but the announcement came. I said, meanwhile, enjoy the rumors. What they all really mean is that this so-called corpse is very much alive. Now, I just want to say this. I love looking back when there wasn't a pundit Star Trek industry. I may have been the only one. And that I was, okay, so I'm going to pat myself on the back about that. But what I'm trying to say here is the same reason I go to Will Rogers to talk about things today from his time. We're not quite at rock bottom yet. I hope we don't get to 2005 rock bottom. But we may be coming up at a time after we enjoy Strange New, after we enjoy the Academy, we may be looking at not so much a different output, different attitude, different politics or political leanings. Politics more so about what is the right way to use Star Trek and how to do it. Go back to movies only, do TV, but it'll look differently, and who might be running it. There's a lot of question marks we're heading into, even as we try to sit down and enjoy this season of Strange New coming up, and know that there's 1.5 more to come, and 2 that are apparently now going to be jammed out the door. Perhaps we might all be surprised, and Alex is renewed for maybe not 10 years, maybe 5, maybe 3, besides being not at all. Again, we're in a time of questions. And of course, we're in a time of bigger questions about if Ellison is now allowed to finally have Skydance take over, what the new Paramount will look like, much like what the new Star Trek will look like. And we're all still waiting to see what the hell even the media landscape looks like. We've been talking about this for months. I just thought, in the time of celebrating anniversaries, this was the 20th anniversary of the Summer of Doubt. No, it was not Best of Both Worlds summer. It was the summer of the summer the franchise collapsed. The summer of the Ghost Town franchise with the tumbleweeds, blowing through the streets. And one by one, the tiny little outposts going away. My personal world with Decipher and the official fan club magazine, the Viacom world, and the actual output, all combined. Within a couple of months, there was nobody I dealt with that I even know. Nobody was still at a job. Not just production, at the studio. Some of the licensees were gone. There was nobody there to give them a job, or allowed to give them licenses. John and Paula were just on the barest of caretaker status. And StarTrek.com fought for its life for respect as the JJ. They were held to a corporate crap standard when the rest of the world and Tony's rise of TrekMovie.com was beating them constantly. And people couldn't understand why the official site was so slow. Well, because we were going by contracts, contracted time schedules, and that old promotional playbook. We weren't under the whim of what agents jumping the gun and leaking casting announcements. And the rest of the world free to announce that. And then even that went away. StarTrek.com was gone by the 07. This was the beginning of the huge transition from old Trek to new Trek. And it wasn't even into a world that we knew what the hell it was going to look like. Both in the big picture, culturally, technologically, and in the small picture of who was going to call the shots. Wow. Wow. That all hit me like a ton of bricks last week. So I wanted to mark this summer, not an exact time and date. It was an ongoing process through the summer. This time, 20 years ago, the sets were being stored. The Enterprise sets were being pulled out. And unlike the Voyager sets from 4 years earlier, enough had changed where Paramount was not scrapping anything. They were storing it, knowing that it might be good for museums, for other shows, for at least auctions, and do good auctions. That much had been learned in 4 years. And I have pictures of a lot of the sets out on trucks, out on Star Trek Street. Because my phone number at Paramount, 323-956-8007, was my line that came in with fact files and stayed for 10 years until somebody finally realized that no one was paying for it. And it got pulled in 2006. Yes, I had a phone line. It rang up in licensing. Wasn't an employee, wasn't on the payroll, which someone finally figured out when Star Trek the magazine and fact files quit paying for it. So, pivotal time for me, pivotal time for the franchise, and definitely a low point. We did not know what the future was bringing. Again, we're not quite there yet today. A lot of the same stuff is floating in the air. And if you're interested, someday maybe we'll pull out all those PDFs of laid out pages and get the lost issue 156 out. Oh, gang, I think that's going to do it. Did you enjoy the 20th anniversary that you didn't even realize you were missing? Yeah. We didn't know what a fallow time was going. We didn't know. On one hand, 12 years versus 20 sound like a good thing. We didn't know. I tried to tell people that good or bad, the movies would not satisfy fandom's thirst for Star Trek. We were too spoiled after 18 years. We couldn't go back to the 80s of a movie every 2 years. The world was moving faster. Social media was coming into play. We are all making fan films, much less fan fiction on mimeograph pages was not going to cut it anymore. And the internet was 1,000 times faster than the Well Committee and paper and stamps. And look what's happened the last 20 years. The highs and the lows. It's been amazing. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. 20 years, wow. I'm going to take a micro break here. If you're watching us all on YouTube right now, please leave a comment below. I'm going to see what the live folks are going to do here in chat in just a second. But I appreciate you watching us here on YouTube. Like and subscribe and do all the things. Please hit the bell, Leave your comment. Spread the word. I got into the YouTube game late, so appreciate all that. Some of these people have 1.5 million viewers and absolutely nothing to say. I'm just gobsmacked. Meanwhile, just a quick reminder, would you please, that it is summer. And it's a good time to plan, if you're coming to LA, for business or pleasure. If you have a spare day, you want to take a Star Trek location Trex tour with me, a day tour, 6 hours, quick lunch, and you plan it with my help and my concierging, my driving, my wrangling your camera, your props, your cosplay, whatever it is you want to do. There's over 50 places on the list, on the greater SoCal list, from 2 hours north of LA down to almost the Mexican border, just here in this part of the world. It's amazing. If you're coming this way, get in touch with me. Let me know, LarryNemechek.com, TreklandTreks.com. We will talk about it. One person, 2 people, a family, a small group. Love to have you with us. I've been doing that for about 8 years, right? Yeah. Meanwhile, of course, it's time to thank all of our Patreon folk, our TTL club. So thank you so much, Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Halbert Gunn-Johnson, Lawrence Todd, Greg Wickstrom, Mitch Keith, Andrew Jazimski, Justin Weir, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. And our live wires, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Chris Garrett, Robert McLeod, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, James Durovich, Dave Gregory, Dan Leckie, and Casey Shafsky. Thank you so much, everybody, for that. If you want to help me out here with our live stream, End of Trekland, thank you so much. It's Patreon, patreon.com/TreklandLive. It's a $5 or $10 level. Pretty simple. I keep it simple that way to help out. $10 folks get the shout out, plus access to the first few years of our Portal 47 behind the stage creative interviews. No actors allowed. We want the people who never get to tell their stories, get it recorded, and get it out there before they are no longer with us. And we've been doing that. This will be the 10th anniversary this summer. In fact, coming up on San Diego, I soft beta tested launching Portal 47 10 years ago this summer. Oh my God. Speaking of anniversaries. Yeah. Hey, the Trek Files I mentioned is up. It's our 13th season finale with Jonathan Frakes, talking about another anniversary, the 35th anniversary of Mr. Warfire, the Best of Both Worlds summer, the summer that changed everything for Star Trek. Another one of those. Changed everything for Star Trek again. Yep. It's wherever fine podcasts are, or at thetrekfiles.com is our page now in Memory Alpha with the whole archive there. You can scroll it easily. Got to scroll down to get to the newest one. I know. But it's all there with the player and the documents of the week, because we're the only podcast that has homework. And of course, everybody, if you're looking for me singly, it's Larry Nemechek on Twitter X and Blue Sky, and then Larry's Trekland. Here on YouTube, on Facebook, and Instagram. You want to be there, especially as we get into the convention season and see what's up. I'm going to be live diving with our Portal 47 members, a few at Comic-Con, but especially at Trek Vegas. The years keep evolving. The vibe is different. Nothing seems like it's ever static. Every year or two now, there's some change in what's going on. CBS has announced the Hall H show for Saturday at Comic-Con. No connection to Trek Vegas. So the big news panels for both of the remaining live action shows, including the one you haven't seen yet, will both be at noon to 2:30, I believe, or 2:30 to 2 in Hall H. So you'll be waiting, even if you're at home, you'll be waiting to see what comes out of that. So stay tuned for that. That'll be, a week from Saturday? That's going to do it for me, gang. Thank you so much for being here. I hope these words of wisdom. I'm going to turn around and see what everybody in the chat's doing. But if you're leaving us now on YouTube, please stay healthy. Do all the things. We're having a measles outbreak this year across the country. Take your health into your own hands. Do all the things. Even if it's not recommended. You know what was recommended 3 years ago? Do that. Yeah. Stay woke. Check the sources. Oh boy. And truck well, everybody. Okay. little, that was more reflection than history. But I'm back scrolling, and we will see who all is here. Good to see everybody. Oh, cool, Chuck A. Why are we so slow? There we go. Thank you. I was partway through that. And the first one we did for a season premiere was awesome, but that was, yeah. Now, Mark Stage has a best of both worlds marker with Ron and Brannon and David Livingston at Vegas on one of the days. So I'm glad somebody else is thinking about it too, but there you go. But yeah, Jonathan. And we didn't just talk about best of both worlds. Listen to the podcast. I'm not going to spoil it. It's a longer for us. It's 30, 35 minutes. When you got Jonathan, even John is not going to quibble about time. So maybe you've got it for 2 commutes if you're a short hauler, or a longer than usual treadwell exercise. But yeah, it was a good one. It was a good one. We went beyond just even the best of both worlds. Yeah. Trek Reviewer, hello. I know you've been with us before, Trek Reviewer, but you'd tell me if this was your first time, right? There you go, Carl. You remember how upset you were when Enterprise cancellation announcement was made? UPN would gone in 2 years. You were wrong. It was a year. Yeah, little rinky-dinky UPN. I think I did a show remembering the Enterprise the Save Enterprise campaign. Boy, that was a saga in itself. That begat a whole wave of wacky fandom history and some folks that have they been forgotten to the world. That just blew up like anything. So much for the dead franchise. Yeah. Yep. Melanie, you've got 80% of the world's almonds in the Central Valley. Yes. Blue Diamond almonds. Yes. Your baseball team is the Modesto Nuts. Pity they're being moved to another city. I don't know where. Oh, no. Go Nuts. Also, Modesto, the home of Bradward Boimler, as I was refreshed on watching that. You were part of many Save Enterprise campaigns. Yep. Oh, Rose, happy Tuesday to you too. Yes. Hey, Ma. Hey, Sherry. Yeah, Plushie's right back there smiling at you. Plushie McCoy. Oh, Christoph, excuse me. You can't remember how you found Tuesdays Live or Dr. Trek. It was so long ago on socials, but you wouldn't be surprised if the Trekkie Girls provided a first point or a link. There you go. Love the Trekkie Girls. I haven't seen them in ages. Hi, Judy. Judy, who took a Treks with me earlier this year and decided she had to join Portal 47. Some of us are still scarred from the Best of Both Worlds Part 1. There you go. The worst summer ever. Yeah. And, Patrick has that great story about the people in the car next to him at the stoplight. It's funny. Hello. How am I doing this? Oh, hey, May. See, what kills me is I realize that a lot of those old stories are fresh, just like me. A lot of those stories that I've heard a million times back in the day are fresh because he hasn't told them in 10, 15 years. I wasn't necessarily going there, but I realized that while we had the time, we could always cut something if we didn't like it. And I don't think there were any cuts of that aside from the one bleep. Get an TNG action figure, get a Riker for free. Oh, well, Chuck, that's awesome news. Good for you. In this day and age right now, we can use all the good news we can get. So, everybody, hey, Willie, hello. There was a sound effects program that included lines and effects from Best of Both Worlds. I bought it for your Mac. You bought it for your Mac. There you go. Hey, Christoph, can we expect an Academy premiere? That we can expect it. Will we get it? P Plus is advertising it on socials. Oh. Okay. Thank you for that. Did I show this? Yeah. Transfigurations. Yes. Yes. Hi, Sydney. Good to see you, hale and hearty. Oh, wow, Trek reviewer. Now that's obscure. You know, David Gerald and Dorothy Fontana both wrote for that series. And both were pulling their hair out because it was NBC and sci-fi in the late 70s. And everybody, too many fingers in the pie. Yes. I think that bit about Patrick leaving was all just for promotional glitz. Yeah. To get attention. Yeah. Ma, Cherie, I know where you're coming from. Even with all the options, you still haven't rewatched that last episode of Enterprise. Wait, what? Did I say I finished watching Growing Pains? Did I say that? Growing Pains. Lord Dex. Did I really say Growing Pains? Oh, good God. I need the Rutherford into. Yes, absolutely. The midday and European edition of Ask Dr. Trek Portal 47, the roundtable, is on for tomorrow. The term you would use for that last episode probably violates YouTube community standards. Yeah. I think the problem was really Moonves being allowed to run CBS Paramount. Well, post-divorce, but before that, it was UPN just being a little tin pot network with little people turning over every year. And then Moonves took it over, and everything went into shock because Star Trek went from being the golden calf to having earned its numbers like everybody else. But they gave it a sick little, here, we want you to have CBS level numbers on this. And it wasn't going to happen. It couldn't happen. Livik! Is that what we're doing? Is that the tone we're looking at here? Yes, this was the irony. Star Trek and Doctor Who seem to be up when the other's down. And now, ironically, Who and Trek are both apparently going to be could potentially be into a fallow time again. Rose, do you actually have to ask this question? Carl, loved the fan films, the one that stayed in the legal area, and the TOS remastered episodes during that time. Yeah, that was the other thing. In 2 or 3 years, we'll have I have a little bit of an insider's thing there, but maybe hopefully we can get some key people involved. The TOS remastered, this was so long ago, and it feels like this. The TOS remastered wasn't about selling remastered DVDs. It was about giving local stations that still syndicated the original series, because that was still a thing in 2006, 2007. It was giving local stations fresh eyes on old episodes. Oh, and by the way, we can also help advertise this by selling new DVDs. People forget that the syndication arm of CBS was the originator of what became the remastered projects for the original series at first. And that didn't exist for TNG, which is another reason why the TNG sales were the driver for success. And when they went down as the years went by, like a recipe box or a Partworks subscription, when that went downhill was the whole meme about we can't afford to do DS9 and Voyager because sales tanked even on TNG. And the original series, aside from being only 3 seasons, not 7, had the syndication money coming in to help support it. In fact, the bulk of it was budgeted out of syndication. People forget this now. Yes. Oh, well, Sherry, I'm glad we can help out. You have a little bit of the vibe that all of our lifers did during the pandemic at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings or 1 p.m. Eastern Saturday afternoons. A decompressed time to everybody get together. Christoph, with the broad bandwidth of Doctor Who stories, early Russell T Davies Doctor Who was relatively close to Trek, in your opinion. Sadly, another pond crossing after BBC America earlier. Getting Disney Plus on board might turn out to be a fatal mistake. Oh, cool, Chuck. You got to meet Dan? Galacticon in Denver. Thank you, Aldine, the Wrath of Wrath. Yes. Oh, Carl, you were making predictions too, huh? There would be a new Star Trek series or an announcement of one by the 50th anniversary. That was also, yes. That was a longer term than I was thinking and specific, but yeah, the 50th kind of hit me in the face about 2 years out. Made me feel very old. But there you go. They announced it in the November of 2005 or 2015. Yes. They announced the something would be happening with this new service in November. And then, of course, the 50th was the next September after that. Hey, Carl, do I have the rights to publish those articles? Well, every once in a while, I think a long time ago, I asked Dan about it. I've never asked an attorney at Paramount, like, the one that I know at Paramount. Part of it, if I don't make any money on it, no one will care. Is there something the writers, I'm trying to remember, if the writers got paid their big $150, what did we pay then? $100 for a story? I don't know. We actually wrote stories. They weren't just glorified, crappy little clickbait Q&A things. We wrote stories. I think if I didn't charge any money, if I didn't monetize it, I don't think anybody would have a problem. And it's almost a historical curiosity now. But I would still. But having said that, I don't want to throw it away. Not monetarily, but like promotion-wise. It would be great to bring that in. This is the anniversary of like leaving Enterprise, and those weren't laid out, so it would be cool to do something with it before the end of the year. Something else I need to get on and see it. Go root around and find out about that. Let's see. Yes, I'd forgotten that, Christoph, until he gave it to charity and they auctioned it off. It wasn't like he sold it. Yeah. The kidney stone is why Kirk's remains are stored at the Section 31 Secret Archive. There you go. Yes, Ma. Drifting along with the tumbling tumbleweeds. You like that imagery? Okay. Does anyone think that Star Trek came in 2005 was like a cancel? Was like the song American Pie or Time to Say Goodbye? Not quite sure. Studio buying time until virtual Star Trek a la Meta Apple Vision is viable. Hi, Glenn. That's your take, huh? Buying time until they can do virtual and just give us CG recreations of old actors and no new stories, or pay non-actors nothing to be models and do that, kind of like the way they paid actors to be the characters that were painted for the New Frontier books covers. Looking at us live folks needle. There. Thank you all for keeping track of all of this. Yeah, my figure, and I bet you'll be recirculating it, retweeting it, reposting it all. Oh, look, I got spam from Twitch. Yay. Okay, we'll just block that. Thank you, Trek Reviewer. We have been here before. Hey, Chris. Good to see you, everybody. Yeah, they have a lot of the cast down. And, for Strange New, that's fine because they keep acting like everybody knows them already. It's like, no, people do not know all these people, especially the kids. Holly Hunter, Paul Giamatti, all the Discovery bringovers, Picardo. It's the kids that we need to learn. Mm-hmm. You did make it to a Tuesday live. Yay, yay, yay. Well, time moves slower down there in South Texas, doesn't it? It would have been interesting to see how the series has gone if Picard had died. I wonder if Picard had died, how that would have affected Begin DS9. Oh, you mean at the end of if they'd actually gotten rid of Picard, whether he died or was gone or whatever reason? Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me, guys. No editorial comment. It's live. That's kind of a big question, Trek reviewer. kind of a pivot. Yeah. TOS remastering was for networks. No, it was for the individuals. It was syndication. Remember, in America, they have direct-to-station sales, and all the stations that had been having, Star Trek at 4 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon or 6 on the weekends or after the late news at 10 or 11:30. All those stations, the ones that made it famous and big and fat and rich in the 70s, all those kind of stations and situations, it had been after Next Gen had been out and done for 10 years. They were like, come on, can we get something? There's nothing new on the horizon now. Can we do something to spruce up the old at least? And that's what the remastered came out of. Yeah, I must have misspoke, Chris. I'm not sure what you're saying, but I hope I straightened it out there. Christian, we will let you lurk. Get back to lurk. Hey, you get to lurk. Historical curiosity. Sing. I think we're at the end of the chat, gang. I didn't realize, Sing is a Benny Goodman piece, that song. Yeah, looks like I've driven everybody off, Christoph. I just wanted to put a marker down. For not the best of both worlds summer this time, but for the summer everything fell apart. Star Trek Tumbleweed Summer. Yeah. And how my optimism at first blew up 9 ways to Sunday by the time the year was over. Oh, just because the show is going away doesn't mean we'll be going away. Well, it meant that pretty much everything went away. From all the angles, from all the platforms. Yeah. 2005, the year I was waiting for the world to hurry up and figure out what it wanted to be. And it finally did in a bloody, convoluted 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And I'm not talking about the return of Discovery. I'm not even talking about the JJ movies. I'm talking about the way we operated, the way people like me would operate. And we finally got there. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Christoph. But when I got to the late 90s and we came to Germany and I realized how Europe worked, I was so pissed. I was even more pissed that we didn't have universal health insurance over here. Now we have this situation where you all have a month of paid leave, and people in the States are giving it all up for the man, as the old phrase went. Yeah. Oh boy, we have so much to fix in this country. That's it for me, gang. Thank you so much for being here again. Again, a quick thank you to all of our Patreon folk. Thank you so much. Where's my thing? There you go. Boom. Thanks so much. Yeah. Boop, 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 boop. All of our TTLers, all of our live wires, thanks so much. If you want to help out with Patreon, there's how. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. The way you can really help out and help yourself is if you just get yourself to LA or take a day while you're here. Come down from Trek Vegas. Come up from San Diego. spend a day at least here, and we'll do a day tour Trekland treks together. Love to work out your customized itinerary for the day with you. 4 stops and lunch, right? Once again, so proud of where the Trek Files has gotten this year with some of the guests we've had. Wonderful, wonderful finale. We have a season premiere already in the works in another month or so that you're going to love too for another anniversary of this year. But the Trek Files with Jonathan today. Yeah. Thank you all for your comments. Everybody seems to have really enjoyed it. I know I did, sitting there watching it all unfold in front of me and doing a Trek Files live again instead of just by Zoom. The original DNA of Trek Files was all of them but one were live at the Roddenberry offices in the podcast room until COVID. And now all but 2 or 3 have been done by Zoom. Thank you, Jonathan, for doing that. We had lunch too, which helped lubricate things a little bit, which was always fun too, or a brunch, I guess. Yeah. Gang, it's all the socials. You know where to get me. Larry Nemechek on Blue Sky and X. There. Hey, I'll say that, repeat this next week. If you are at San Diego, my panel is from 6 to 7. We're going to have a look back, speaking of Enterprise, a look back at a tour with some of the crew. Your backstage guy in action here. Some of the crew who actually worked on the series, their perspectives and memories, not just of the finale, but something happier. The wind down of Enterprise and what that felt like. Look for that 6 to 7. I think we're in the Hyatt. Look for Dr. Trek and my name and you'll find it. And then Trek 2 weeks after that. Nailing down the schedule. We'll get it done. Other than that, gang, I'm going to be entertaining Cadet Alice again already here in just very soon. I thought they'd be here by now. Till next Tuesday, for everything happening this week, for everything happening in the world, everybody, again, would you please stay healthy, do all the things, even if no one with a title is saying them right now, you know what to do. Take care of yourselves. Stay woke, check the sources, and Trek well, everybody. We'll see you.